Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. And now your host, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we have Dan Fradenburgh, syndicator and founder of 506BME. You're going to definitely want to stay till the end of the show because even I have no idea what's going to transpire in the next 30 to 45 minutes. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you very much. This is great hopping on the Foundry.
Yeah, that might be the first introduction I've ever delivered with its own disclaimer, but
It's fair. It's fair.
So you have an interesting story. I understand that you got into real estate because you were essentially doing IT for an affiliate marketing company. This is an affiliate of a coaching program. So why don't you take us back to that time? What were you doing? What did you learn? And how did it take you to the present?
Sure, great. So the reason why I got involved with them is because I worked for web.com, which is a CRM, but the difference between that CRM and say ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, the typical ones you find in real estate and commercial real estate, web.com's one will also accept credit cards. There's a bunch of others that will as well, but it's just another level of complexity that's involved in the software. And when I stopped working for web.com, I opened up my own CRM agency. And it was about 4 years before I started working for a single family flipping company. They were flipping 10 houses a month. They'd have 10 house deals every single month. And they had a coaching wing, and I was responsible for all of their web pages, all of the funnels, the transactions, the automations to fulfillment, and then also the affiliate side was the extra part. There were lots of affiliates of my old boss who would promote his coaching programs, and I'd have to make sure that everybody got paid what they deserved.
Awesome. So cool thing. You started out, as I understand, as a sort of a full stack developer, left as essentially running the program.
Yep, that's right. And 506BME came because I knew that there was something missing in these different CRMs. I'd studied a bunch of securities law, and I found out that we're basically responsible for documenting and proving that we knew somebody's level of sophistication, appetite for risk, and things like that. And CRMs are great for saving, first name, last name, email, address, but level of sophistication as it relates to commercial syndications, that's not one of the fields. And I'm not entirely sure how you'd fill it. So that's why I ended up making my own unique situation, my own unique solution.
Exciting. And I think we're going to return to coaching in a minute. So let's talk some more about 506BME. It is a very unique solution to a problem that I think that we see a lot of people making in this business. I was going to ask you, what is the number one mistake you see syndicators making? I think I know what you would, how you'd answer that question. But again, why don't you kind of describe the state of the field? I mean, what are people actually doing? What is common practice in this field? And how does that relate to securities law and how we should actually be doing things?
Awesome. So the most important term to understand when it comes to syndication is the term accredited investor. And if you're an accredited investor, that means you have a relatively high annual income or you have a high net worth that excludes the liabilities and value of your primary residence. And if you are not an accredited investor, your options are really, really limited. If you are influential and sophisticated enough to be like a director of the company that's actually offering the syndication, then you are accredited for the purpose of that deal. And then you can go ahead and talk to other people in that context. But the thing that people keep on messing up is they won't understand the significance of their capital raise being a 506B. And that's about 85% of exempt offerings, also known often as off-market deals. So if you are not an accredited investor, a 506B, it really has a lot of additional issues you have to be aware of, which is that you can't be turning around to people publicly and saying, hey, I've got this opportunity, you can invest in it. Because if you take their money, then you're selling an illegal security without a license. You have to file your exemption, and then the rule of the 506B is you can't be talking to people. Of course, you can do a C, and that means you can only take accredited investors. But if you're not an accredited investor, there's a large chance you don't know a ton of accredited investors. So hopefully that's clear enough for your audience.
Yeah, good. I think that pretty much sums it up. So, I mean, people are just kind of winging it. They may have an interview with somebody, but they're not documenting it. And I mean, I like to record them. I think that's a good idea. That's a good step up. But 506B, I think, is really taking it to another level, because what you're doing is you're essentially, as you suggested earlier on, making that database, the database that didn't exist in the past, the one that actually tells you, I don't want to speak for you, but tell us exactly what it does.
Great. So I think the most exciting piece of 506B is actually the Dan Does Deals core competency cube here that I have. It has the 6 different roles as I perceive them in a commercial deal. And the key thing is that it's got 3 different words that are usually just called investor. Those 3 words are repositioner, financier, and sponsor KP. All of those are usually referred to as just an investor. However, there are key distinctions. So you may have somebody who's more similar to like a bird dog or a wholesaler, depending on if that's even legal in your state. But that would be different from a repositioner. And so because it's illegal in some states, I don't include it. So I pretend that everybody who's an acquisitions person is some degree of a repositioner, whereas a repositioner should be able to underwrite the deal, make assumptions, and figure out where there's upside. A financier is strictly passive, or it may be just a bank. It's someone who's only dealing with paper and money. Whereas a sponsor KP, you're only eligible for commercial loans if you have somebody in the fold with a similar asset. And then sometimes the contribution of the sponsor KP is a large balance sheet. But the thing is, you do need to know which of those 3 an investor is. And dandoesdeals.com has a PDF that you can print out of this for free. So that's one of the key things I believe in the 506B interviews. When somebody watches it, they really have a clear idea of how that person would contribute to your business and what their core competencies are in general. And sometimes you can talk to a syndicator for an hour and a half and not be able to get that out of them for one reason or another, because it kind of shows your hand a little bit. And I think that we need to get past that, because you don't want to prolong a conversation when it's not going to go anywhere.
Right. So you have some idea of what the person is competent in, how not just how sophisticated they are, but specifically what are their interests, et cetera. So you're not putting people in the wrong deal. For example, if you have somebody who, they're living off of the proceeds of their investments, might not want to put them in a deal that has no cash flow. So you're getting at those things as well, right? So, and it's also like publicly available, right? These chance encounters, you can find them on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then if you subscribe, I understand there's 2 levels, right? You've got your free thing where you can kind of get in there. I've got a free account over there. I think you can learn something about me, but I don't sponsor deals. What happens when you get your paid account? How does that work?
Sure. So when you have your paid account of 506B, it's different from the dandoesdeals.com playlist of chance encounters where it's completely public. But the main difference is you can't access somebody's 506B profile unless you answer the 4 questions it takes to open your free account, which is basically, what's your name? Where do you tell people you're from? That was a very carefully crafted question in this business, because sometimes, like where they're from isn't where they are. So that's why it's like, okay, where do you tell people you're from? In other words, where do you focus? But then also, what is your core competency? So are you just a passive investor? Are you an operator? Are you an accountant? Are you a real estate attorney? And so that way, when somebody checks out your profile, you have something that you can print out and show the SEC as far as when you connected on the platform, how many times they've seen your profile, how many times you've seen their profile. And of course, it has the video itself, which goes through your motivations, the core competencies, your buy box, and how to reach you.
Right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I guess that gets into your web presence, which you do have quite the web presence, rather interesting web presence.
Yeah.
We'll deliver some further disclaimers later. But so we talked about your chance encounters. You got your company 506 and then you also have real estate as a scam. So I promised we'd talk more about coaching. So I understand real estate as a scam has something to do with coaching.
Yep, that's definitely fair. And it's mostly because coming from the tech side and helping these coaches build their online funnels, you get a behind the scenes look where normally I think it's pay to play. You have to be an insider, like you have to jump through a few hoops, and it's going to give you a certain impression as far as the motivations of the coaches. And some of them aren't that great. It's one of my favorite people to quote is 𝐅𝐨𝐫𝐠𝐞𝐝 down in Florida, and she was the first person I heard say that if you invest in a deal, in other words, if you buy part of a property, you gain the right to turn around to the sponsors and say, hey, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? And then you end up getting educated while you're actually making returns. So in most situations, I think it's better to, do your education, but like instead of dumping 5 figures on some guru, it's much better to, get involved in a deal where you can at least accept, like the cash on cash, the different stats like that. I prefer people do that. Now, of course, sometimes, I'm thinking of some friends of mine in the last year who got laid off. And in that sort of situation where you're going from having, high levels of income to having to make something work and fast, then I think buying a higher ticket training program makes sense. But in general, real estate is a scam.com. There are 2 reasons for the name. One of them is because coming from tech, you get lots of introverts. They're highly skeptical of marketing and anything that involves large amounts of money. So I knew I'd be talking to people who had a chip on their shoulder, or at least, their beginning position is going to be of disbelief. So instead of trying to convince them that, the sky is blue, I was going like, okay, well, these are the things that as a digital security guy, I noticed, like I describe those as vulnerabilities in the sense of like honest people doing what they should be doing. They could end up getting cheated pretty badly and losing their shirt. So instead of pretending that that's impossible, like most people, and staying very, very optimistic, possibly even, running the risk of sweeping it under the rug, I decided to get in front of all of those different subjects and make videos of them. And the one I mentioned earlier is the one called "You Can't Do Deals with $0, parentheses, but your coach can." And I think that really shows how cynical it is. These days, I know that, the social media reach is really what those guys are providing in return, whereas it's basically everybody else. You have to have skin in the game, or else, you're not going to be very popular.
Right, exactly. Somebody in your deal has to have skin in the game. All this is just wonderful stuff. But again, I like how you're not really painting with broad brushstrokes. You're not saying all real estate coaching programs are a scam. For certain people, certain programs may be the right program, and you just have to know who you are and whether it's a fit.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think somehow along the way we lost the thread of your real estate career. We talked about sort of how you got interested in real estate and how you decided, hey, maybe there's something I want to be into. But what was your first real estate deal actually like?
Yeah, it was a disaster. Thank you for asking. So while I was taking electrical engineering, I was also working two jobs basically. One of them was running the sound and lights for the university's high-profile events, and then the other one was teaching guitar privately. So money was a problem for me while I was in college, even more than, most students. Every student's basically broke, but it's just whether or not there's a safety net hiding in there somewhere is the real question as far as I'm concerned. But I had a friend who had an aunt pass away, and he ended up making, I convinced him to make an investment for the purpose of student housing. So my first value add was around the year 2001, I think. And the deal was that I would, put on my handyman hat and I'd fix up the building using the materials supplied by the owner of the building. But unfortunately, the materials never arrived, which made it very difficult to do simple things like patching up holes in the wall, things like that. So that was a bit of a disaster. That wasn't the biggest thing that caused my pause in being involved in real estate up until working for the Ohio firm in 2014. But it was a learning experience as far as, yes, there are risks involved. There's holding costs. And sometimes even when it's in somebody's best interest, they don't necessarily do what they ought to, like buy the drywall. So.
Yeah, interesting. But that got you here, and you've come all the way to being a GP in New Deal here with Lauren Capital. And why don't you talk a little bit about Lauren Capital and what you're doing over there?
Sure. So I'm the CTO there, and a lot of it ends up being big marketing pieces as well. And like I really put on my marketing hat. I studied up in copywriting, all that sort of stuff when I realized that tech is boring. And I needed to have something a little bit sexy to bring to people to make a better future. So with Lauren Capital, I do end up helping with their REI Rocks review. Our REI Rocks review is fantastic. Commercial real estate education, including mindset and all that sort of stuff. But the most important thing to know about Wichita Falls, Texas, and Lauren Capital is that's really where their market is as well. So Wichita Falls is northwest of Fort Worth, so DFW, and it's about an hour and a half to get to Fort Worth and 2 hours to get to downtown Dallas. So, like Angel considers it a tertiary market. You might find some brokers who figure it's a secondary market. I think it's in the path of progress, which I know that you, as a data expert, you'd be better at calling that than I am. But it just seems like a great place. Texas is super duper hot, and it seems to have a bit more sustainability than some of the other hot markets that are out there right now.
Well, I mean, it seems like everybody's moving to Texas, all these businesses every day, every week. Sounds like there's a new major company corporation that's moving their headquarters to Texas. Tesla just being the most famous one in the last maybe 18 months or so. I don't know why. Did they get tired of getting shut down in California? Something, I don't know.
Yeah, it's something.
All right, I guess we can be a little more tongue-in-cheek for a minute. I want to say nice painting in the corner. Looks like Van Gogh. I mean, from here, the way that it's getting pixelated, it looks like Nuit Étoilée after consuming way too much absinthe.
That's funny. It's actually if I've got two pieces of art here. The second one is the one that my daughter did, which is like some sort of pirate ship.
Oh, I love it. You got three masts there.
Yeah,
it's a respectable pirate ship.
Right. So now you can see that one there. My son did this one, and it was inspired, I believe, by Starry Night Over the Rhone. But the thing that I loved so much about this one is he decided to paint it in the first person. So right here, there's actually like a boat as he's traveling down some sort of canal. And I just loved that he did that. So I thought this is a great thing to add to my office, especially because so many people end up seeing it through these podcasts.
I'll just add another comment there. The pirate ship looks probably like a modern pirate ship. They probably got the fire up the Iron Jenny. They got the diesel engines running. I notice you have no sail. But you
yeah. Well, they certainly aren't big. Yeah, for sure. I'm not. Maybe it stays anchored.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we need modern pirate ships. I think modern pirate ships do run on diesel.
It's funny. I've had the good fortune of meeting a bunch of people in the military, and my favorite question that I ever heard about the difference between people in the military and everybody else is that you get questions, very important questions, like who would win in a fight, a ninja or a pirate? And of course, I told this person in the military, well, obviously the pirate, is how's a ninja going to compete against an AK-47? Or at least that's what pirates use now.
Modern pirates. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, we do have modern pirates.
Yeah, you don't have to see them.
Yeah, that's sadly has not been eradicated. All right, so I promised we'd have our tongue-in-cheek segment. So you did suggest a potential title for this podcast. Do not watch this episode. Not safe for men, women, children, or pets. So just want to let everybody know that was not my title. And then I also asked you, this is for our pregame here, what are your 3 greatest strengths? And you said making great lists. So I think that's sort of a self-referential thing. That's a recursive comment here. So this being one of your great lists. Reading the instructions and sabotaging in a way that makes the reader unsure whether the writer is, I believe that's pronounced dumbass, or just a shit disturber.
Right. And if you look carefully, you'll notice the third one was number 4.
Yes, that was. There was no number 3. So making you wonder whether you read the instructions, I suppose. But anyway, yeah, good stuff, Dan. So you keep it fun. All right. So, yeah, I was going to ask you about internet cats and whether that made the world a better place or not. But I think we kind of have to get down to our serious business here. So let's talk about real estate markets. You talked about Wichita Falls and your most recent deal. So that is like literally in Lauren Capital's backyard. Do you want to talk about picking markets?
Right. So as far as Wichita Falls goes, on paper, compared to the demographics that I, crunched back when I first made the jump into commercial, Wichita Falls, Texas is not great because of its lack of growth. However, it's not negative growth. So apparently back in the 1960s, it had a population of 104,000, and the most recent estimates say that they have 104,000 people. So like right now, so they do have some nice features and all that sort of stuff. But, this is Lauren Capital actually closed their 72 unit deal back at the end of 2021. And so that's really what, is turning into a snowball of making more offers, taking over more in Wichita Falls, Texas. So I have a lot of confidence in the area. I think that Texas is just going to get bigger as far as population goes.
Now, what about cash flow? This is a high cash flowing market, I would imagine. A lot of these, and I think you can say with 104,000 over a century, you can say it's pretty stable in terms of population.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that's why I rely on Jason Williams so much. He's been modeling chemical reactions, thermodynamics, all that kind of stuff. Part of he's got his PhD in chemical engineering, and I did electrical engineering myself. So, and the nice thing about engineering at my university was the first year it goes through a bunch of different. Like we even had to take geology. Even though there's not a whole lot of geology involved in electrical engineering, but they basically felt that, you need to have a good grip on how the world works. And that's why they went through it. But that makes me aware that a guy like Jason, like chemistry is really bad for not acting in an intuitive way. And so if you're doing the mathematical modeling for that, it's quite challenging. Whereas when you're doing commercial real estate, it's all man-made, right? It's all, dollars and cents, these different rates, it's not completely under people's control, but at least it doesn't have the fun nature of nature getting in the way. So my big thing is that Jason, he'll wait until a deal makes sense. Like he's been putting out LOIs at prices that he knows he can make work, but he's has no, like, time is on his side because he's a local. And when you're on the internet as a syndicator, that's actually kind of rare to have somebody where, they're really focused on their local market. They drive 15 minutes to one property, 3 minutes to another. And between the two, it's like 160 units. So like that's a pretty good and stable way to make sure that you can weather a few storms and all that sort of stuff. The cash flow, the cash on cash rates, they're good compared to DFW because it's just outrageously hot as far as markets go. So it's better than that, but still, we're not looking for home runs because it's local. It's like solid doubles, are better until a home run shows up. So that's how I describe it in general.
Right, because if you're looking at these stable cash flowing deals, I mean, again, you've got a pretty solid market there. I mean, most people don't work in their backyard, but not everybody lives in Texas.
Right.
And
exactly.
yeah, these base hit deals, if they're reasonably safe, can make a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I see that you've started multiple businesses in your life, Dan. I'd like to ask you, what is the greatest lesson entrepreneurship has taught you?
Yeah. So the greatest lesson entrepreneurship has taught me would be the most recent thing that it taught me. So through all these other businesses, I had, some sort of success, like, affordableVAs.com was the old name of the CRM, and now it's funnelfixing.com. And so like I've made more from that than any of my other businesses. But the one that's most recent is the importance of networking. If you stop networking, I can assure you your business is going to fall apart. Money only comes from people. So if you're hanging out with trees and rocks and rivers and streams, well, you're going to have a very difficult time, changing your bottom line. And the only way to do that is to get to know a whole whack of people and just get positive relationships with them, which means just don't push them all the time. Like, I think everybody who's in my circle knows that, I'll let you know if something is going on where, like we can profit or something like that. But no is always an acceptable answer to me, because I want you to say no to me again, 6 months, 8 months in the future, 2 years in the future, like lots and lots of no's until it's something where you have absolutely no problem saying yes to.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think every entrepreneur needs to understand.
Right. So what I'm hearing there is provide value. So you're providing value to your network, and it's okay if they say no to 5 deals. Who cares? They're staying in that network because they see something, right? If otherwise they would just hit unsubscribe and say, see you later, sayonara.
Exactly. And they definitely should subscribe, especially to this channel right here. I know that they have this ugly red button that's like down there, and it's subscribe.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's free to hit the button. Like, why wouldn't it's free? Why wouldn't they hit the button?
Exactly. And yeah, this is a reminder I was going to say earlier on, but I'm sure that we're going to capture in your show notes, in these show notes, that you can't do deals for free or with no cash, but your coach certainly can. Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. And you get introduced to people like Dan Fradenburgh. So why wouldn't you want to subscribe to this channel? I can't think of a good reason. And since Dan can't either, I think we'll just move on. But I think that probably what will be worthwhile to do right now is I've retitled this, we used to call it the lightning round, but I like to call it the firing line. So what do you say, Dan? Are you ready to step up to the firing line?
As ready as I'm getting.
All right. Okay. So I think we talked a lot about your real estate markets, so we can kind of skip that. But what would be some advice you would give your younger self?
It definitely going back to that last one about networking. The other thing that I'd emphasize is that, if you do decide to make the jump into commercial real estate, you'll actually notice that you've got a different type of person predominantly. Like I was afraid of doing customer facing, in other words, client facing, because of being a guitar teacher from age 16 at the local music store. So I knew that if I had to, endure, some customers, it would be really, really tough. But when you meet commercial syndicators, they aren't, I don't think they're as needy is one thing as well. So like you don't have to worry about people like clinging on and just like being difficult and making it impossible for you to go about your life. So that's the thing I'd say is like, hey, commercial real estate people are really, really nice. You should start
Awesome.
meeting now.
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of the best fringe benefits of being in this business is that you do get to meet a very friendly and very open group of people. I mean, probably few things require so many moving parts in a transaction as a commercial real estate transaction. One of the reasons why networking in this business makes more sense even than it does in other businesses. So yeah, we tend to be a pretty friendly bunch. All right. So I want to ask you, what is the best real estate advice you've ever received?
The best real estate advice I've ever received, buy for cash flow. That's got to be the number one. And then once you've done enough of that, then it's about equity multipliers. Just so like once you can make ends meet and you have financial freedom to do what you want from your passive income, then you need to pivot into how do you make that nest egg grow and grow and grow without you messing it up.
Yeah, I love it. That advice is going to get a lot of people through these coming difficult times. If it's cash flowing, a lot harder for that bank or the agency to take it away. Now, I want to guess, I'm going to say here, usually ask what's the worst real estate advice you hear going around. But I imagine that I already know you're going to say something along the lines of, we don't really need to document this relationship, or, you know what, sure, we got a substantive relationship. I've been talking to this guy for like 6 months.
Yeah. It's I know that like you mentioned earlier about getting tongue in cheek and how this episode isn't suitable for anybody, including pets. But like there's a lot of similarity between these private deals and like a deal for a bag of weed or something back when it was illegal. I'm up in Canada where it's legal, but like the idea is like, oh, shh, don't tell anyone. Or let's like, no, he's cool. It's like you've known him for 10 minutes. How can you know that this, right? So that's kind of the nasty version, I'd say, like the amplified version of the situation with a 506B. But
well,
if you're
speaking of amplifying, two things I'd like to amplify from that response are, first of all, known him for 10 minutes. So that sounds like you're presenting a deal to somebody the first day you met them, which is, like black letter law. Don't do this. And the other is the economy. A lot of people who think, hey, these are just common practices. Hey, this is just how it's done. Well, guess what happens when deals start going south? You're going to see a lot of more people reporting their syndicator to the SEC. And some of these syndicators, it's going to be found, didn't dot the I's and cross the T's. So if you've done the right thing, there's no need to worry. But again, we're going to see some deals go south. And I think we're going to see best practices, or common practices, I should say, tighten up quite a bit.
Yep, that's definitely what I'm banking on as well. Of course, 506B it doesn't have to be commercial real estate syndications. So even if you are syndicating like a .com business, the rules are the same. If you do a 506C, you can go ahead to advertise to anybody you want, but you can only take accredited investors. But with 506B, you can take basically any amount of money that you need, and they don't have to be accredited, but you have to document it. And from what I understand, the SEC, if you have a certain amount of ambition as far as like assets under management, how much real estate you actually intend on controlling, the SEC does have a mandate, I understand, to audit people once you get to a certain point, regardless of if someone complained. So if you hit like $1 billion of assets under management, they're going to check it out. And then what you did 5 years ago when you didn't know any better, it still counts. So that's what scared me right from the get-go. I'm going like, how can I make it where I'll never forget to document a relationship. How do I
All
do
right.
that?
I don't know if I should say this, but this is why I do 506C offerings. But
Yeah, definitely.
but you're right. A lot of people do 506B. And if you're going to do it, I mean, obviously you're somebody who's out there trying to help people to do it right. And I probably will do a 506B at some point, but we'll see.
Right. And that's
Usually,
the other thing about the C's as well, is the C's don't really have as obvious of a quirk with a Dan Fradenburgh sized solution. And that's why I went for 506B. It's because it's like, well, that's a really weird piece of data that they need to save for the SEC, and I'm not sure how they're going to do it. Whereas with 506C, the only real thing that you could provide would be like the accreditation verification, and there are companies out there doing that for $50 a pop. So it's like, it's not that great of a platform move to be going for that.
well, I love it. I got to tell you, that's what we're doing today. We're finding Dan Fradenburgh sized solutions to Dan Fradenburgh sized problems.
That's exactly it. That's
okay. Usually this is where I warn my guests, hey, we're going to take a nod to the randomness of the universe, and whatever card I pick out here, or you pick really, because you're going to tell me when to stop cutting the deck, might be quite strange, but I don't think things could get quite much weirder than it's already been. So just let me know when to stop cutting this deck.
I will tell you to stop now.
All right. Oh, all right. This one's not odd at all. What do you most admire about your parents?
What do I most admire about my parents? Wow. Geez. That's a tough one. Like one of my biggest problems, of course, just full disclosures, my mom passed away 14 years ago. And so like that makes it really, really difficult to, I actually kind of compartmentalize a lot of things to do with my mom. As far as my dad goes, he's a really hard worker. He opened up a restaurant back like 9 years ago. And so even at his age, he spends a lot of time on his feet. And I really respect that. A lot of it is, he's just a person who is like mentally active all the time. And so like he has to have something to do. And that's why, he's continuing to do it. But I think that's the big one.
So fair to say your father was the one who helped to light that entrepreneurial fire for you?
That is also definitely true, 100%. He's been an entrepreneur for more of his life than he was, a W-2 employee. Even though he had some large stints, like he taught automotive mechanic work at a community college, and worked for Snap-on, a few different car companies and things like that. So. Yeah, that's definitely him. And it's been interesting getting to know that side of his life a whole lot better, because there are a lot of similarities between his relationship with cars and my relationship with computers. Because, like I remember about 4 years ago saying to my wife, it's like, all I do all day, every day is fight with computers. Her answer is like, but you win. It's like, yeah, I do, but I'm still right. And that was his attitude towards cars. He didn't love cars, but they were a means to an end. So yeah.
I think I got to repurpose that. Yeah, my son, he's really good at mathematics and he's still frustrated by it. But I'm trying to tell him everybody's frustrated by mathematics, but some of us, the ones who can actually do it, consider yourself gifted, son.
yeah there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah you really see it. It's amazing how often you see like otherwise really, really intelligent people, and then you get to like calculus level, linear algebra, any of those kinds of stuff, and it's just like it's just not clicking. It's pretty wild.
Well, awesome that you and I were able to do that. Obviously, both of us computer scientists, and would love to talk more about entrepreneurship. Your father's story, a lot like my father. I mean, he had a good career in the corporate environment, but decided that he wanted to go on his own and just founded a lot of businesses and had a good time doing it. He had to keep busy and work literally to the last day of his life. So
Mm.
Great story. Well, let's see. Let's try and give back to our listeners a little bit. I want to hear about a book that's helped to forge you as a leader or as an entrepreneur, and why.
Yeah, so I got into digital books pretty early, and so if it weren't for that, my house would be filled with books. I'm a big reader, so there's so many out there that were so influential. It's really hard to say it. So, like, I'd rather just give some vectors instead. So one of them, I'll start with the most surprising one, which is books on copywriting. Books on copywriting, like, they will move your business forward more than just about anything else I can think of in today's environment. So things about copywriting are big, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, copywriting specifically. If it's about writing, it's going to be a lot better. It's going to really, really help. And it's just like, like Wayne Gretzky always said that you should actually practice multiple sports and not just stick to the one that you're good at. I'd say that that's also true with writing in general. But on the face, like, I think if most people looked at my life and they said, I think this is the book, like if they were omniscient and they thought this is the book that really made Dan Fradenburgh who it is, it'd probably be Guerrilla Marketing by J. Conrad Levinson. It's an old book, but that's part of the importance. The thing that you take away from it is that everything in your business, like anything visible, should serve multiple purposes. And the one purpose that it should definitely serve is to get customers more excited about what it is that you want them to do, which is to make the conversion. So some people don't spend enough time washing their store's sign. And that is like, a dirty sign looks like a closed store. And so that's one thing that you really need to focus on if you own, storefront retail. You're really
Awesome.
marketing.
Yeah, and great suggestions, great books there. Writing's a great thing. I mean, I probably learned that the wrong way, becoming a PhD first to become a writer.
Yeah. I
Actually, you're an author too. Can I take a step back?
Definitely.
You do have a book, and it is called Attention to Details, something like that. I know I got that wrong. Okay, he's going to hold it up. Now we have the proper title.
Exactly. Figure it out. The Attention to Detail Handbook. And it's a punchy little one. I actually had the world's fastest reader in on an interview, and he blasted through all 32,000 words in 90 seconds on camera. But so it's not meant to be the sort of thing where somebody has real difficulty consuming it, but it's definitely some eye openers. And Attention to Detail specifically, there were two reasons why I chose that as the title. One, it was because I wanted to make sure that it was a keyword that nobody else was hitting. I also wanted to make sure that it was a keyword that wasn't very good. Okay, so I knew that I'd be looking for a commercial real estate sponsor where I could do my digital magic for them. And so I ended up making this huge project to basically prove to established sponsors that if you're trying to go for a 100% organic approach, in other words, not buying pay-per-click ads, you're going to have a very bad time. And so that was one reason I chose Attention to Detail. But the bigger one is that I've had, multiple side gigs as I've gone through my career. Because of that, I've seen lots of different business models. And the thing that I thought that I had that made me different from most people is most people aren't particularly meticulous. At least it's difficult to hire for meticulousness. And so I was going like, all right, well, if somebody is lacking in that regard, if they're willing to put in the effort, they want to become successful, I'd say work on your attention to detail first. And that's a super difficult thing to teach. And that's why I put it into a book. And I also made it somewhat encyclopedic in nature. In other words, the back chunk, it's a few different jobs that I've been paid to do. And I'm giving you like the fastest way to get on your feet in that. So like there's like audio, video editing, music, linguistics, like specifically Mandarin as well, things like that. And it's supposed to get people going. It's like, okay, so if you analyze things in this way, then they tend to fall apart and become understandable much faster than in most classrooms, for example. So that's what that's about.
Right, awesome. Love the keyword story, because I thought that by misspelling the Foundry, like founder with a Y, I would come up with something absolutely unique. But I found that all these search engines, what they do is they spell
Correct.
check it, and then they
Right.
spell it right, and then nobody can find my stuff. So if you're out there wondering why can't I find additional episodes of the Foundry, just look up Foundry and George Roberts or something like that, and I think you'll get it. But so that's an example of a marketing fail. I should have come to Dan Fradenburgh. All right, so
Got to try everything, right?
so how has a failure or misstep set you up for later success?
So, well, one of the things I like, there aren't many things where I describe myself as stubborn around, but one that I'm very stubborn about is maintaining unrealistic expectations just so that I can see if it's possible. And the one I'm talking about specifically is they say that you can't be successful and still have a strong family life. You can basically pick that or pick the other. Like some people say, like health is another factor. It's just basically, in the balancing act of life, you're not going to check all the boxes. And one that I was not willing to leave unchecked was have a family that know how I feel about them, how much I care about them, and make sure that I'm setting them up for the best life possible. That's the box that I just like, that was non-negotiable. And what did end up falling out while I was doing that balancing act of making sure I was, the best possible employee in the role I was, the thing that fell through was networking. And that's why I keep on saying, build your network, build your network, build your network. No matter how much you don't want to put that in your life, I think your networking is actually more important than the job you have right now. And that's a pretty scary prospect, because I was always of the attitudes like, I can't lose this job. I have to do everything I can to make sure that, like, even like regardless of the level of scrutiny, you'll know that like I considered as many possible factors, as I could, and made sure that, I compensated for them. I worked for those. And I'd say the mistake was definitely not enough networking. You got to build that network. Its personal branding is so huge on social media and whatnot. It's a lot of people need to know who you are.
Outstanding. And if you could set us out with a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs.
A quote. Okay, and we're talking from somebody else?
No, ideally it's going to be a Dan Fradenburgh original.
Okay, so when you're an entrepreneur, you actually get to choose who you hang out with way more than you do in a W-2. Okay, it's really easy to get stuck with people who you don't, see eye to eye with. Your work ethic doesn't match. Your ethic might not match. They might hate your guts, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the beautiful thing about making the jump, even though it's scary and you'll have to tighten that belt tighter than you think you like you ever thought was possible, but just the fact that you're hanging out with people who you respect and enjoy their company, it's going to make it all worthwhile. It's I actually bought a domain yesterday. There's nothing on it yet. It's there's always realestate.com. So that's going to be something as like a, as an alternative to keep people in mind that if things aren't working out, like there's plenty of competition in real estate, but if you actually demonstrate that you're willing to put in the effort, there's always going to be a real estate person who will take you under their wing. You just have to make sure you find one who's not just going to use and use and use and use and use and never give back. But
amazing. So I want to say that this was the interview where we covered everything from internet cats to the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I want to thank you for taking your time to come and share your knowledge and experience with our audience, Dan. Thank you. Oh, and before we go, though, you have to tell us how we can reach you.
Excellent. So LinkedIn's the best way to reach me. My name, if it's still showing in the recording, it's very distinct. So I'm pretty easy to find. The
Yes.
QR code I have right here, if you scan that with your phone, that goes to the FAQs page of 506 So that's the platform. The tagline I'm using these days is I can be your chief compliance officer for as little as $497 a year.
And can I get you to point to that subscribe button one last time?
Yes, it's right. Don't look too closely because you might like your eyes just it's really really bad. And all it actually does is it means that George's videos might end up on your list of suggestions. Okay, so it's not like YouTube is going to send you a bill. You know, it's really painless. Go ahead and hit it. It's completely free.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure.